Hi, this week we are going to talk about visual aids. So you need to find a visual aid that would work as a component of your persuasive speech, and then you're going to submit it in your discussion forum for this week so that we can talk about what makes an effective visual aid and why you would add this visual aid to your persuasive speech, even though you aren't going to put it formally into your persuasive speech. So the purpose of a visual aid is to help explain something or demonstrate something that you couldn't do just by speaking. So something that would be helpful if we saw it. So a lot of you used visual aids in your demonstration speeches because you had objects or props that helped demonstrate what you were doing and showed us the different steps to your process. So that's a great way to use an effective visual aid. There are some other kinds of visual aids, but for this class, we're going to focus mostly on two types of visual aids and how you would display them. So in the classroom setting, at this point, we have moved entirely to using a digital display. So we use something like PowerPoint or Google Slides or some other kind of software to show the visual aid in class. And I encourage you to think about the visual aids is in terms of images or photos, so things that would help us, the picture is worth 1,000 words, like see something that would be harder for us to just visualize, or to use something like a graph or a chart, which is a visual representation of data. So I would like to steer you towards visual representations of data, towards graphs and charts, because I think those make effective visual aids. They are ways to demonstrate information in a new and meaningful way. So something that helps us understand what would otherwise be complex or uninteresting. And you can do that through a couple of different kinds. So the textbook talks about line graphs, which help us think about things across time, bar graphs, which help us make direct comparisons, and pie charts, which help us think about how parts of a whole are distributed. So I assume that during your research on your persuasive speech, you have come across a visual aid or a chart or graph, and I would just encourage you to use one of those. So just simply post that in the discussion section, help us understand what it displays and why it would be beneficial to show it in your persuasive speech. If you want to use an image or a photo, that is also acceptable, but you have to move beyond simply showing us a thing. So we don't need to see what drugs look like in a speech about legalizing drugs. So, like you used to see those old DARE posters. We don't need to see that. We don't need to see an image of football in order to understand why we should or shouldn't ban contact sports for youths. So instead, you want to focus on an image that specifically helps us understand something in a new way. So for example, if we're talking about something like fracking, which is a complex way to retrieve oil, you might show an image or a diagram that helps us understand how that oil is extracted. One semester I had a student use an image of a pot and still because they were talking about home distilling, making alcohol at home, and their argument was that it would be safer if it was legalized because we could get and purchase formal equipment. And so that's an example of where being able to see what that looks like helps us understand in a way that we wouldn't without, because I can't just visualize what that is without knowing it. But there are a couple of caveats. So the other thing is you're trying to create this empathetic connection with your audience. You don't want to do that through photos because it's a very fine line. So if you're talking about animal experimentation, you don't need to show us, and we don't want to see really graphic images of the way that animals are kept in factory farms or the way that experiments leave animals looking. That really just turns people off, and we don't look at it, and it kind of has the opposite effect of what we're doing. So it doesn't mean you can't use an image. It just means that you don't want to use a image that is sort of repulsive to people. The last thing that you could do in terms of this particular speech is because you have to have a call to action, you have to connect us to an organization or group that's doing the work that you think is important. You can take a screenshot or a grab of their website and use that as a visual aid because you could show us how to get in contact with or what these organizations are doing or how to find them online. So that would be a place where a simple image is actually helpful and does show us something that we want. So again, Don't concern yourself with how you would display the image in the video. You do not have to. Do think about what this image or visual helps us understand, because that's what you're going to have to explain for your discussion and for the credit in this class in terms of your visual aid. So I hope that gives you a better idea of what to find and what you should be looking for and what to share. And remember, you only need one. So good luck. Thanks.